Okay, so we're out on the deck. Kids are playing in the kiddie pool. I had the hose out because I just cleaned and filled the kiddie pool. So, but then I looked out at my lilies down in the mulch underneath my deck and like on the side, and I was like, they're kind of looking yellow underneath there. Maybe they need some water. So I took my hose and I stepped over the baby gate. So all the kids are still on the deck. And I walked down with my hose underneath my stairs. And I'm standing, so the deck floor is like pretty much right behind my head. And I'm watering the lilies with the hose. And then I was like, is the pool leaking? Is there water? And all of a sudden I turn my head like this. And Levi goes, ha ha, Mom, I pee on you. My 3.5-year-old peed on my neck this week. So if you're ever wondering or forgetting what that's like to have a 3-year-old boy, there's your reminder. Thanks for joining us on the Clarify podcast, where Kelsey and Ben answer any questions that you, the congregation, have texted in. Do you have questions? Are you confused? Let us clarify.
So during the very long break between that intro and where we are now, you made the comment that you're becoming more Catholic every day.
Oh my gosh,
So with that in mind,
no.
What were you saying about praying to Saint Mary? Oh my goodness.
I want to know because I'm increasingly becoming more Catholic. No, I'm not. I'm not. But why does Lakeview use wine for communion?
Because the elders don't want to party. That is...
It's too hot in this room for that. You had that locked and loaded since like before you walked in the door this morning.
The moment you texted me that last night, I was like, that's my answer. Most Protestant churches use some sort of juice or something just simply because, I mean, for one, you've got alcoholics or former alcoholics or current alcoholics for that matter. You got kids, you got, people who just don't like the taste of wine so you just smooth over all those problems, just give everyone juice and you move on. It's not, there's not
because it's not about the substance in the cup.
Right.
Right.
So there's not like a huge, deep theological reason. It's just like...
that it's wine. It's just because that's what they were drinking.
Right.
Right. So the second question that we'll answer is Isaiah says, by his wounds we are healed. And I'll just read the full verse, which is Isaiah 53:5. But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. So the question is, how then do we explain when some sick people aren't healed?
So this passage is obviously I think the entire chapter from the first verse, actually from before the first verse, 52, actually all of 52 as well, is about Jesus coming. So this is obviously this is about Jesus. This is not it's prophetic for Jesus. It's not anything else. That being said, just by that passage alone, he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. That was irrelevant to say. My point was, with his wounds we are healed. Logically speaking, how does killing some guy heal our sickness? That verse obviously is saying that his wounds we are healed like eternally. We are saved. We had this. Now, does God heal? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I don't know, what the person has in mind who is asking this question, but this verse here is talking not about that every sick person will be healed, but that his wounds are salvation. We will be eternally healed. And so, I mean, even in that, to really dig into the theology and the philosophy behind that question, all sick believers are healed. It's just maybe it'll be on this side of death, maybe it'll be on the other side. All sick people are healed, which is a beautiful thing. So, I mean, we can ask that question. And I mean, there is a question to ask there too. It's not really in this passage that I see.
Right. We could have a 5-day conference on that, on the question of healing in this time and physical healing and all that. But
also, just like the same reason I don't own a Ferrari, it wasn't God's will. Some in seriousness, like some people, it is God's will to heal them, and there's people in our church that have been healed in very miraculous ways, and there's people in our church who have not been healed, and like that is the actual answer. It's like it's God's will for some people to be healed and some people not to be healed.
But I like
just
what
like
you-
being rich or not being rich. I don't own a Ferrari. I'm not. It's God's will for some people to be very wealthy, and we've got some very wealthy people in our church who are very faithful saints. I'm not one of them.
And
I'm not one of the wealthy. I am one of the faithful saints. Just to
that's good.
just to clear that one up.
Just to clarify. Yeah, so I like what you said though about like how we are healed. Like we are healed now. And it kind of speaks to like, oh, okay, this about Jesus and the Messiah that Isaiah was writing, like it didn't happen yet, but he was writing, by his wounds you are healed. Like he was writing in the present tense, and it just kind of goes to that idea that like God is outside of we are confined by time and space, and God is not, and like the spirit realm is not, and someday we might understand that, but where I was going with this was like, because you said it's not God's will. Well, I think it is God's will that we're healed, but not in the way that we expect it to be all of the time. Like you were saying.
Yeah,
I'm getting really deep about this, but like God's will is that we are all brought to him. Like he wants all of us. He loves us all. And that is where we have full healing. And in the end, we get a new body and all of that. And so God is existing outside of what our sense of time. And we feel like, why are we having to struggle with this right now? But it's just part of learning to trust him. You know?
I
know
mean,
what I'm saying?
yes, I agree.
I know.
Where you were.
It's always. I don't know.
What you said in the end, yes.
It's really hard to imagine because we are not God.
If we're going to take this question to the absolute, why doesn't God heal everybody always?
Yeah.
We all know that there is a time in someone's life where you stop praying for healing. I had a grandpa who died back in September of last year. He was 84, I think.
Okay.
His heart was giving out. He was like, he's getting weak and frail and everything. We weren't praying for him to be healed. Like he was at the end of his life, and even if you heal him of one, like even if he was healed of everything in that moment, it was like it might be another month and he's gone. Like there's a moment in every, especially when we're talking about a believer, where you don't pray for healing anymore.
Right. True.
Because like there's the circle of life. Like you get to the end of it at some point.
You pray for a good death.
Essentially, yeah. So, and again, that's pretty much universal. Even if you don't believe, even if you're atheist, there's a point where you're like, it's time for them to go.
Especially if you're atheist.
Sure.
Sorry, culture of death on my mind.
If there's that point in our minds where we not that we don't want people to be healed, but we want people to be fully renewed, not just healed of their disease. And so if there's a point where we don't think that they necessarily ought to be healed, then why should they be when they're 45? And I mean, you go back, 1,000 years, and 45 would have been an incredibly long. 45 might have been our 85, and so we'd have people in this room maybe saying, "Well, 45, like let them die already," So
it's kind of all relative.
Like what we're all wanting is eternity.
Yeah.
We're wanting
That's
God
what
to
we're
heal.
made for.
Yeah, we're wanting God to heal everything and to completely renew us, and not just heal us of the disease we have, but completely renew our bodies, completely renew everything we are. That's coming in eternity.
Restored Eden.
Right. And so there's questions on why did so-and-so's mom get healed of cancer and mine died at 35? Or why did this happen to somebody else and yet I'm sitting here perfectly fine? I think there's plenty of questions we can ask about that, but what we're yearning for is what's on the other side.
Yeah.
And we have that deep, whether you're a Christian or not, there is that desire of like that perfection, because that's how we were created. That's how we will end up if you're saved by the blood of the Lamb. And so we're in this already, but not yet of.
That's kind of what I was trying to express, but I say it too much, the already, not yet. I say it way too much, but it just is so true.
It is.
It's so true. Yeah.
So, I mean, the answer is like, whatever God's will is for each individual, and some people are healed and some people aren't, but what we're actually going for is coming. And that doesn't mean there's not a struggle here, because there's plenty of struggles in this life. And there's struggles, huge ones, there's small ones, there's everything in between. What we're all yearning for is coming. And so this question, why doesn't God heal everyone? If you're saved, he does. It's just not in that, like you were saying, it's not in that time frame. It's not in that way that
in
you're
our
thinking
expectations.
often.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not comforting, especially when like someone's just experiencing a loss or suffering. It's not comforting to be like, well, everything happens for a reason, like that kind of throwaway line. But there is a lot of truth to that. Like the Lord has a plan for you. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans for welfare and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and come and pray to me, and I will hear you. You will seek and find me when you seek me with all of your heart. Now, this was for Israel, but I think there's a portion of that is also for us. And when it doesn't feel like some people, I think we've mentioned this before, like just because things are hard does not necessarily mean that you're not going in God's will, Yeah. So, and that vice versa, just because something is easy doesn't mean that you're in the spot he has for you. So,
well, even before that, the verse before Jeremiah 29:10 says, when 70 years are completed for Babylon.
Yeah.
It's not even on the time frame of Israel. It's on the time frame of Babylon. So God sends them into exile, essentially kills off all of the living people who are sent into, not quite, but like
a lot.
70 years, that's most of the people who are, we're talking little kids essentially that were sent into exile.
Yeah.
He kills off doesn't kill off. He waits for all the adults to have lived their entire lives, waits for the time frame of Babylon to bring them back. So it has like that time. We take Jeremiah 29:11, we throw it on coffee mugs and signs and everything. But the whole thing is based on, you're going to wait an entire lifetime before I bring these promises. And even all of those are predicated, or not, they are predicated, but they're prophesied and predicated that it's all about turning back to him.
Yeah.
So they live in Babylon, they get exiled, they're still mainly as bad off as they were in Israel. And it's about, when has the time come for Babylon, not even the time for Israel. What you were saying about everything happens for a reason. Romans 8:28. And we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to His purpose. That doesn't mean that everything's going to be good. That means it. You look at the Bible, it's telling you the exact opposite. There's going to be a lot of bad stuff, but everything works together for that ultimate good. And we might not know what that ultimate good is, but the terrible car crash somehow fits in that verse. The person that you love that died from cancer, somehow that fits in that verse. And I can't sit here and actually explain it to you. I can't explain how that verse applies to a lot of things in my own life, and I probably never will. But it's where it comes back to, just so often, where do we start at? Do we look at that verse and say, God is working all things together for good. I don't know why. I don't know how. It's making me mad right now. I might be completely devastated, but that's what I hold to. Or do we look at our situation and say, well, that must not be true. Where do you start at? If you're starting with what God has said, then all these things, it doesn't make it easy, but it makes it easier to be able to see that God's completely sovereign, God's in control, and all this stuff is He knows what He's doing. And if we were God, we would be doing the exact same things. And that's hard to fathom.
Yeah.
Because we just can't, we're on such a lower level that we're not even on the same scale. And
yet He's going to make us in charge of angels. Like it's all His plan. It's all His idea. And that's just kind of a switch that happened for me when I was a young adult, when I had been reading the Bible like it was about me. And then when you suddenly realize, like, this is not about me, and switch to reading things about, like, this is God's story. This is about Him and what He did. And we are part of it. He wants us to, like, partner in the gospel with Him. But, like, who gets to define what's good? I don't. You don't.
Yeah.
God does. God defines what's good. God defines what love is. God defines what truth is. And if you can stand on that rock, you'll weather the storm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you start? Where is your heart to begin with? Are you looking at the world and saying, what does this tell me about God? Or are you looking at God and saying, what does this tell me about the world?
Yeah.
Only one of those will give you any answers at all
that
are anywhere near true.
And praise the Lord for that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not going to be easy. It's never going to be easy on this side, but it makes it a lot easier when you have some sort of actual, not just truth to cling to, but like truth personified.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that we can learn something, obviously, we can learn a lot, but one thing that we need to do a better job of learning from Jesus and the early church, or the early Christians too, and just Christians around the world right now.
Yeah.
In the West, we just have a really a bad theology of suffering, a low view of suffering, and suffering, I think the Lord uses suffering in a multitude of ways. And so he defines what's good, not me.